Good morning, men. It was a quick night, wasn't it? Quick turnaround, but that's good. We won't do that every Thursday night to you, but every Friday morning we will be here, and the coffee will be on, and we're glad that you're here. And one of the reasons we structure Ironworks the way it is, we know that you travel, we know that some of you hunt, we know some of you, can't be here every week, but you're always welcome. And so Dave has put it well. Every week stands alone, even though we're in a series. And so we're in a series that is going to be in Joshua. We're going to go through the first 8 chapters in 8 weeks. How's that? That's pretty simple. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, the 6th book of the Old Testament. And in the promise principle, every week what happens is you if you're in a promise principle group, you read a chapter a week. That means you read it every day for a week. And you look for the who, what, why, where, and when kinds of things. You look for inductive study. You look at what does the passage say to me. You try to immerse yourself in it like it's a letter written to you, and you notice things in it. That's the way every preacher gets ready for a sermon. He just does the inductive Bible study method. And in a promise principle group, you read the same chapter every day for a week. And then you come together and you'd say, here's what I've noticed. Here's a command, here's a promise, here's a principle I've noticed. And it's amazing when you do that in a group of men, how you get new insight because we all see something different. Now, the meaning of the text is always the same. I mean, God has one meaning for a text, but the applications are numerous. And that's where the promise principle becomes magical, because different men see different things, and you go, oh, aha, I had never seen that. Same thing happens around the tables here in Ironworks. When another man says, here's how it works for me, or here's an experience in my life that has been meaningful, men tend to listen to that experience. And so that's why we're really pushing the promise principle as small groups, and it's simple. Anybody can lead it. You show up with your Bible and one chapter and what you've observed. And so what we're going to do in Ironworks, the part of the teaching is I'm going to be taking one chapter a week. That doesn't mean that I have all the answers. I'm just looking for some lessons about fortitude in each chapter. But you can start that today. You can read the chapter, Joshua chapter 1. I'm not going to handle everything in it. I'm just looking really at the first 8 verses today. But so we'll be taking a chapter a week in the teaching series, and the promise principle will also be doing that. And you can find that on our website under small groups. We've got 6 groups ready to go. So take a look at that. Also, starting Monday, I will be giving you hopefully a 90-second, the first one will be a little bit longer, but 90-second videos, 40 days of fortitude. And I hope it can become kind of a little vitamin pill for you. You can click on it sometime during the day, and we'll walk you through 5 days a week for 8 weeks. That's what we're going to do. So fortitude, what is fortitude? Fortitude is the strength of mind to encounter danger or bear pain and adversity with courage. And you might want to underline, it's the strength of mind. It's the toughness of the fabric. Fortitude is like Kevlar of the spirit that holds everything together. It's like a bulletproof vest that you wear. Not that you're bulletproof, but it blunts the darts of the enemy. Fortitude is that toughness that we need. Now, why would we need fortitude? Well, we need fortitude when we're delayed and we're frustrated in traffic. Before we go to road rage, we need fortitude. We need fortitude when something's broken. We didn't expect it to be broken. It's supposed to work for me. I'm supposed to plug it in. It's supposed to work. And I need to fix it now. We need fortitude when something has been lost. A key relationship. A person close to you has died. A job. Where do you go when you are thumped with the thing that takes your very heartbeat away? It's fortitude. We need fortitude with draining people. None of you would be this. I have a friend who says there are faucet people and there are drain people. And we need fortitude to not just go in and try to do a, scorched earth with these draining people. You have them all around you. They're called kids. Wife. Work. Why do we need fortitude? Well, we need fortitude because there's conflict. And there's never more courage needed when you need to ride into the fire of a conflict. When you need to go to somebody and say, what you said or did really hurt. And I need to hold up the mirror to you and we need to talk. That takes fortitude, and it is seldom seen in the living church. Why do I know that? Because people come to me all the time saying, I have a problem with so-and-so. Can you go tell them? I said, well, why don't you talk to them? Oh, well, I think I'll just let it go. Why do we need fortitude? Because we fail. We trip, we fall, we drop the ball. We sin. And we need fortitude to take another step. Why do we need fortitude? It's because we are sometimes betrayed by someone that we have given our whole heart to, our treasure to, our business life to. And they have taken that treasure and betrayed us with it. Why do we need fortitude? Well, because the summary of it is, it's hard. Life is hard. It's not easy. I ride a bike a lot. I ride for the downhills. And it goes so quickly. And then it's uphill again, against the wind, with mud and mosquitoes. Life is hard. We need fortitude for life. So, a friend of mine, Dennis Rainey, asks me this question every time we get together. What is the most courageous thing you've ever done? I want to plant that question in your mind because that's what you're going to talk about around your tables. It's the only question I have for you today. What is the most courageous thing you've ever done? And a lot of guys are thinking, well, I've never really done anything heroic. I haven't been to Iraq. I'm not on a SWAT team. What have I done? You know what? There's something you've done. And the reason you know that it was courageous is because you did it in spite of your fear. You didn't do it because you felt courageous. You did it because it was the right thing to do, and you stepped into it, not knowing what the outcome would be. That's fortitude. So take a moment, think about that. While I'm yammering up here, you can think about your answer to that question. What is the most courageous thing you've ever done? Well, what kind of man will step into the future with courage and thrive in the challenge? Today we want to look at Joshua. We want to open the book of Joshua, and the kind of man that steps into that is a man who is confident in God. In 1 Corinthians 10, it talks about all these things were written as examples to you. All these Old Testament stories were written as examples to us who live in the New Testament era so that we could be strong and courageous like Joshua. So let me just give you a little background on Joshua, the world and resume of Joshua. His name literally means Jehovah saves. And another way of saying his name is Yeshua. The Greek version of that is Jesus. That's what Jesus' name was, Yeshua. Joshua lived about 1300 BC in the late Bronze Age. I'm sure this is going to bring back all your ancient history to you. He lived 1,000 years before the Mayan civilizations of Central and South America. 1,000 years before that. In 1300 BC, they were preparing for the Trojan War. Tyre and Sidon were the chief cities in the Mediterranean. King Tut was at the height of his power. The Ethiopian dynasty was just getting started. The potter's wheel and the calendar were emerging in China. And it was 2,500 years before Vasco da Gama. I know, I'm looking at the fog. Or Columbus. Or Magellan. 2,500 years before what we think is ancient history for us. Joshua was the aide to Moses, and he was a co-leader of 2.5 million refugees who were coming out of Egypt. Remember, Joshua had seen the plagues, the 10 plagues of Egypt. He'd crossed the Red Sea on dry land while the chariots of Pharaoh all drowned. He saw when the law was given to Moses. He was there at Sinai at the base of the mountain when Moses came down. He had eaten manna for 40 years. His clothes didn't wear out. His sandals didn't wear out. He had the same outfit, from Carhartt for the whole time. And Joshua spied out the land, remember, with 11 other spies. They had gone into the land and seen the land 40 years before we're talking about now, and he'd seen it. But Joshua was also disappointed because he was overruled by the majority. When he went in and saw the land, he said, "Let's go." 10 of them said, no, we can't go. There's too many problems there. We're not going to go. Joshua was sobered when he saw the 10 other spies who denied what God wanted. He saw them die. This is serious business here. He was saddened when he watched a whole generation die in the desert because they were disobedient. Every person over 20 in the desert died. So Joshua, along with Caleb, was the oldest man in the tribe of Israel at the time that we come into Joshua chapter 1. And we're at a unique crossroads because he stands between the promise of Abraham and all the slavery that they went into and the taking of the promised land. So now they're east of the Jordan. The Jordan River comes right down the middle of the promised land. They're on the east side of that river. It's about 120 feet wide. It's about 10 feet deep. It's in the springtime. It's not like the Mississippi. It isn't a huge river like that, but it's still a significant crossing. And God says, I want you to take the Ark of the Covenant, and the priests, when they step into the river, the water is going to stack up upstream, and you're going to walk across on dry land. Kind of a reenactment, a smaller reenactment of the Red Sea. And Joshua is the one who's to lead these people. And remember, this is a tribe that knows nothing about ownership. They know nothing about having a homeland. They know nothing about governance. They've been slaves and they've been wandering for over 430 years. So Joshua has to make something of these people, obviously with God's power. So Joshua is called to be strong and courageous, and we're going to see that in this passage. So here's some ways that he exercised fortitude. Let me just kind of walk through them this morning to kind of prime the pump for what is coming in the coming weeks. First of all, Joshua stood as the minority voice. Have you ever done that? In a roundtable discussion, or at work when you're throwing ideas at the whiteboard, or when you have to make a decision and you're the one that says, excuse me, I think we're not seeing this correctly. Joshua said, with the 12 other spies, he and Caleb said, we need to go in. And they were saying, yeah, but no, we can't do that because there are giants in the land. We can't possibly do that. And Joshua was saying, I cannot unsee what I've seen. And by the way, that's being told us all the time, right now, by our media. You can't see this. You can't see that a woman's right to choose is actually the taking of a life of a human being. But you can't see that. You can't see what you're seeing. You can't see that there are biological realities here. You're not allowed to see that. And some of you are going to be put in a place in your families or in your child's school or in the workplace where you're going to have to very wisely, gently, clearly say, I can't unsee that. I'm a witness to what is real. Joshua was basically, I've seen a land flowing with milk and honey. Yeah, it's got some problems, like some giants. But God has told us the truth, and we need to go forward. So I could preach a message on each one of these, but let's move on. Joshua stepped into the lead. Here's what it says in the first two verses. Joshua 1:1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I'm giving them to the people of Israel. Joshua was summoned by God. He knew for 40 years of serving with Moses that he was destined to be the leader. And Joshua now is being called by God to step up into leadership. And Joshua had watched Moses' career. He had watched the people. And he knew leadership is not a privilege with perks and minions to serve you. Leadership is a huge responsibility. And you need fortitude to lead anybody. You need fortitude to lead your wife. You need fortitude to lead your family. You need fortitude to lead a small group. And Joshua stepped up to lead. He didn't resist. We don't have any record of his hesitancy other than some obviously some emotional issues that we're going to talk about later. Then look at this. It says, I want you to go over the Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I'm giving to them. The Marines have a phrase, leave no man behind. No one left behind. And, it's true at your work. It's certainly true at my work. It would be so easy if it weren't for the people. Just do what I tell you. Everything will be fine. That's not leadership. I want you to take 2.5 million people whose whole DNA is failure and grumbling. And I want you to, along with my power, God is saying, transform them into an army, into landowners, farmers, ranchers, merchants, and a people. All these people, I want you to take these people. I think it was Benjamin Hooks who said in the King James Version, he who thinketh he leadeth and hath no one following him is only taking a walk. Don't we need to look behind us once in a while? Say, onward, boys! And you look around and there's nobody there. They're going, you go, guy. You go. But you're all by yourself. And it may be because you didn't communicate very well, but it may be because your temperament has left a wake that's impossible to swim in. And people behind us are drowning instead of surfing. Joshua was told to lead all these people, leave no one behind. He believed God for something he couldn't see. Look at verses 3 and 4. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you. Wow, that's a promise principle. Just as I promised to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, that's the east part of the river, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites to the great sea, toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. Israel actually never reached all those borders. It came the closest under Solomon. But look what he's talking about. He's talking about the land east of the Jordan, all the way to the sea, to the Mediterranean Sea, and all the way back to the Euphrates River, which is now modern-day Babylon, which is really where Abraham came from. So he's saying, all that is promised to you, and Joshua believed God for something he couldn't even conceive. He didn't have a map. He didn't have a GPS. He didn't have any perspective. He'd never traveled there. He believed God for what he couldn't see. He was a man of faith. He moved toward the conflict. Look at verses 5 and 6. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. And here's the first mention of this phrase. Be strong and courageous. For you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to your fathers to give to them. He moved toward the conflict. It's implicit in this passage that he's going to have to fight for the foothold that God's going to give them all the way in. And the very first place we're going to come to is Jericho, and we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But he says, you will cause this people. In other words, you're going to have to give them some pep talks. You're going to have to solve some problems. You're going to have to take a whining, complaining, scared people and help them see their future, to cause these people to inherit. They want to inherit, but they need to go with you, and you're going to have to cause them to do that. By the way, at the end of the chapter is this vacant promise that these people give to him. They answered Joshua, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go, just as we obeyed Moses in all those things. Baloney. They never obeyed Moses. And this is a whole new generation. And they're all fired up at the beginning. And everybody's coming in. And they're saying, let's go get them. And they put on their shoulder pads. They're ready to run out of the tunnel into the game. But God is looking at Joshua and saying, you know what? Halftime's going to come. And you're going to be behind 17-0. And you're going to have to cause this team to believe in me. And to believe the promise that you have. It's going to take fortitude, Joshua, for you to keep speaking the truth consistently to these people. Well, he overcame fear with faithfulness, and here's what it says 4 times in this first chapter. It says this only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do all that the law to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I wish I had a promise like that, don't you? I do. Jesus said, I will never leave you. I'll never forsake you. In fact, I'm going to live inside of you with my own spirit. So Joshua is an example for us, for us to take advantage of the things that we have been given. To concentrate on one thing. What does the word say? And by the way, this is the first time that the revelation of God is depicted as being in a book. It's always been in a prophet. It's always been through a person. It's always been through Abraham or one of the patriarchs or Moses himself. And now he's saying, the voice of God is written down for you. So meditate on this word day and night, and I will give you good success. Talk about a promise to all of us. This is what Joshua concentrated on. So let's just take some practical lessons. Then I want you to talk around your tables about how your memory has been triggered about something in your life that you have done that's been courageous. And even as you listen to other men, other things will come to your mind. But Joshua embraced fortitude as a way of life. Not just once, not just on occasion, but he knew that when he crossed this river, they were going to enter into a whole new era, and every single day of his life was going to require fortitude. So let's look at some very practical lessons, because there are 2 major enemies to fortitude in our lives. They are fear and discouragement. Fear and discouragement. Fear grows when I dwell on the unknown. How are we going to fight the giants? How do we build a city? How are we going to take the city? Who's going to lead us? Who's going to be with me? And all they did was look at all their weaknesses, and they began to fear. Fortitude grows when I humbly follow. Fortitude grows when I humbly follow. I hesitate to mention this because I'm not setting myself up as the paragon here. But you know, the word is very clear about certain things, certain moral issues in our culture. And I've tried to address those as they've come up in Scripture, not as a politician or a partisan or a talk show host, but as a pastor. And so when I talk about these things, whether it's gender or justice or marriage or all these things, and it goes against the grain of the culture, every time I do that, I have so many people come up to me and say, that takes so much courage. Thank you for being so courageous to say that. Well, you know, frankly, it really doesn't feel courageous to me. It just feels, well, it's just there. I'm just telling you what's there. I'm just humbly, hopefully, following what the Word says. And when you just walk into humbly, can I say this phrase? Doing the next right thing. Yeah. Many times it's not going to feel at all like I invented some new methodology to address my culture. It's just going to say, well, you know, I just have to, I'm just humbly doing what I know is true. Fear dominates when I focus on the opposition. When you watch the visiting team warm up, you see their uniforms. You look at the bus they came in. You look at the tallest guy, biggest people. You compare your uniform to them. You look at their coach and you look at the routine they have, and you go, "Oh my goodness!" If you focus on the opposing team, you're going to have fear. But fortitude is strengthened when clarity comes. You just run your race. You just stay in your lane. You exercise wisdom that you know is true in your attitude and your words and your integrity, and God will lead you. That's how Joshua exercised fortitude. And then we go to the second discourager, which is discouragement. Besides fear, discouragement dominates when I dwell on the past. If Joshua looked on the past, he would say, wow, everybody died. How does this movie turn out? Well, everybody died in the desert. We have a history as a nation of being slaves and grumblers. And if that's all he looked at, he would say, there's no way. I'd be so discouraged. But fortitude is found in worship. And he knew that God was calling him to this task. So I love this verse in Psalm 118, verse 6. You might jot that down. Psalm 118, verse 6. The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do to me? The Lord is on my side. As my helper, I shall look in triumph on those who hate me. I love that verse. I've often said, the Lord loves me and my wife loves me. What can you do to me? In other words, my identity is solid. My identity is solid. And therefore, the blows that come from discouragement are blunted by that. Secondly, discouragement dominates when I try to be someone I'm not. Can you imagine Joshua stepping into the sandals of Moses? Moses is the greatest leader of all time except for Jesus. And it says in the New Testament, he was the greatest prophet of the Old Testament. He wrote the most portion of the Old Testament. And discouragement comes when I try to be somebody I'm not, when I try to imitate. It's good to emulate people's good qualities, but that's not who you are. So when I try to imitate someone else, I try to live in someone else's shoes, I'm going to get discouraged because I don't do it like they do. I have to be myself, not in a selfish, narcissistic way that the culture talks about, but in the way that God designed you. He wired you, He gifted you, He made you, He's given you your history. And so here's the truth that will keep you from being discouraged. And say to yourself, I am the selected one to lead these people, to lead this army, to lead this family, to lead my children. You're the one. It's not Moses. He's not coming. Your servant Moses is pretty blunt. He's dead. You are in this position. And with God's help, He has selected you to have fortitude in the situation you're in. And you may have caused your own self some problems in that, but you're still there, and you can lead with fortitude if you are yourself. You're not some trial lawyer, some eloquent spokesman, some powerful player. You're not Ben Shapiro with all the answers. You're just you. God has put you there, and you can live with fortitude today. So fortitude cultivates the constant presence of God. It's like that picture that James Dobson painted in my mind years ago when his little boy was in a bed of a pickup truck. And he was like 4 years old, and he was trying to get out. So he was hanging over the tailgate. His legs were hanging over the tailgate, dangling in midair. And James Dobson approached him, and he heard him mumbling, and he was praying. And his son was just saying, "Lord, help the boy." Lord, help the boy. I pray that all the time. Lord, help the boy. Here I go. I'm crossing a Jordan right now with this person. I'm crossing the Jordan with this initiative. I'm crossing the Jordan with this conflict. Lord, help the boy. The constant presence of God is what sustained Joshua, not because he was a great leader or a great man. And that's what will sustain you. So starting Monday, I want to give you some little nuggets of fortitude and help us walk through this. Read the chapter, look at it. You can look ahead at chapter 2. We're going to look at it next week. But we want to talk about this issue of fortitude. So I want you to get into groups this morning and ask yourself the question, what is the most courageous thing you've ever done? Do any of these examples in Joshua's life trigger a memory when you exercise fortitude? This is not a time for false modesty. This is a time to think, somebody may benefit from a step I took in my life, from a step of courage and fortitude that I took, and nobody saw it, and maybe I've never even told anybody. I'm not bragging. I'm just humbly saying, yeah, God was there. He gave me fortitude at that time. So share with each other around your tables this morning. Bless each other.